Robots account for 10% of Korea's workforce, making the country the #1 adopter of robotics in industrial settings. Now, this is according to the International Federation of Robotics, as pundits here continue to ponder ways to address the shrinking labor market amid the world's lowest birth rate. With more on Press Perspective today. Hello and welcome. You're watching Press Perspective for this Friday, November 29th, here in Seoul. I'm Min Sunhee. Now, today we touch upon the growing presence of robots and foreign workers in domestic workplaces as Korea grapples with a shrinking workforce. For more on this, I have Colin Marshall, a writer here in Korea. Colin, welcome back.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
I also have Yang Chien-Hao, a journalist also based here in South Korea. Chien-Hao, it's good to have you back.
Good evening. Thanks for having me here.
Right, Chien-Hao, let's begin then with details about the coverage by the British online newspaper, The Independent, about South Korea becoming the first to fill 10% of its workforce with robots. I also believe you covered separately about Korea's employment of robots in the workplace.
We know that South Korea has taken much efforts on developing robots and AI techniques this year, and it's becoming the top country which is adopting robot for works, whether it's in factories or in restaurants. And when talking about the density of the robots, now it has more than 1,000 robots per 10,000 employees here in South Korea, and having a long lead ahead other countries like Singapore, Germany, and China. And since 2018, the density of the robots has increased by 5% on average each year. And I've also covered the issues of the owners who tends to apply more robots in workplaces. During the pandemic, the concept of on-contact, the so-called on-tact, it had risen, and that has triggered many restaurants in South Korea, especially in Seoul, trying to import the serving robots. And you can see after the pandemic, like AI techniques has been improved a lot, and the robots are becoming more popular. And then for South Korea, it has very ideal environment to push the robot being utilized widely, because the chaebols and also the mid-small enterprises, those companies, they are developing many different kinds of robots and techniques. And also Korea has a very good infrastructure in the field of communications, such as Wi-Fi and electronic facilities and databases. For example, I've covered a Korean beef restaurant near Jeonju, which has adopted 16 AI serving robots, which is the most in the world, and it is cooperated with the robot company Daewoo and the Korean Telecom, the KT. And the staffs told me that if you want to have large numbers of serving robots working in the restaurants, indeed it's not that easy, because you need to make every robot become familiar with every place, every corner inside the restaurant. They have to learn. And also, in order to prevent the robots from clashing to each other, and you definitely want to make them walk and work smoothly. So you will need to have good signal and quality of Wi-Fi with good after service, and keep monitoring if the robot itself and the internet is really working well. So the cooperation between the robots and the telecom company, the robot company and the telecom company, is going to be very, very important. And as you can see, it's now become very popular and used widely in South Korea, which means that the cooperation model worked well, and it has grown and become a big business.
Right. And amid the advances in implementing these robots in the workplaces, Colin, there are concerns about the loss of jobs for people. That being said, how do you respond to the anxiety of robots and AI replacing people in the workplace?
This makes me think of the experiences I've had bringing friends or family from America to Korea, or meeting up with them. And we go to a restaurant, and I'm sure you've had this experience. The robot rolls up, brings your food, much as we were just discussing. And in a way, it's not that impressive. They're kind of like rolling shelves. But as we discussed, it's a more complicated technical problem than meets the eye. So people are impressed by them, but the conversation always comes around to, yes, the replacement of humans by robots. And we see videos online on social media of robots doing complicated things, making sushi or breakdancing or whatever the case may be. And these are, of course, they're proof of concept. These companies that make the robots put out these videos where robots do human-like activities as a way of showing how high their technology is. But it's a little bit of a failure of imagination, I would say, to think, what's the future going to be like? The same as now, except the jobs are all being done by humanoid robots. Probably not. I mean, if you think of the history of technology, go back to the printing press or the automobile. When those came out, when they were propagated, when people started using them en masse, what happened was society or civilization was reorganized around them, around the printing press or around the automobile. It changed what the world was. It wasn't so much that these inventions got slotted into the existing world as the world conformed to them. And now the internet, like you could say civilization is reorganizing itself around the internet or smartphones, especially here in Korea, some might say. And so when you think about that, the question becomes more, what do we do about robots taking human jobs? It's less that than, what will the world look like? Jobs will be different. The definition of a job will be different. I mean, think of the people you know right now, all the jobs they do. 50 years ago, how many of those jobs existed at all? So we need to think a little bit more holistically, shall we say, about what's going to change? How will the world fundamentally change? And less about sort of protecting specific jobs from being overtaken by robots that look like the humans that are doing them now, which is not going to be the way it happens.
Right, hopefully not, of course. Chien-Hao, as reported by The Independent, the British online newspaper that covered Korea's adoption of robots in the workplaces, it said that Korea has been investing billions into robotics because of a shrinking workforce, given, of course, our alarmingly low birth rate. What has the foreign media been saying about Korea's labor market in general, Chien-Hao?
As you can see, because of the low birth rate, more and more old people, they tend to keep working after retired in South Korea. And the positive point is that they still have many chances communicating or having interactions with people instead of becoming lonely. But another point is that the older generation still have their limitation. They can't do everything. Then the robots will be adopted. The problem is that the robot will not only substitute those older generation can do, but also they are able to do those middle-aged or young generation people they are able to do. That is to say, it is likely to replace many jobs and opportunities of every age groups in some extent. But when I was covering the restaurant adopting the AI serving robots, I've asked the owner, so will the robots replacing the human staffs? He said that hiring a person equals to the pay of seven robots. But the human staffs are not gonna disappear. He still hires them, he still needs them, and the robot is a way of only making the staffs more easier to work in the restaurant. And the president of the robot company also told me that what he wants is not the robot, or it's not the robots replacing all the human staffs, but making the robots be able to do the job which is too annoying or too dangerous or too risky for the human, which can provide work efficiency and security and safety for human staffs.
Right, make their work a bit more convenient then.
Right.
Colin, apart from adopting robots in the workplace, Korea has been seeking to attract more migrant workers into the country. Now, this year, Korea brought in a record, and I believe it was a record high of 165,000 non-professional migrant workers to ease the labor shortage here in the country. There are plans, of course, in the works to further expand their presence in various industries. What are your thoughts regarding such efforts?
It makes me think of a TV show I saw a few months ago, an interview with an Argentine who came to Korea and now works as a train driver on the Gimpo Gold Line, I believe. And they were making a big deal out of him, like, oh, look at this Argentine who came here and he drives a train. They're all very excited. And I'm thinking, as an American, that's not that strange a job for an immigrant to be doing, is it, driving a train? But here, it still is a novelty to see that particular class of job being done by a foreigner. and a Korean-speaking foreigner as well. Now, I've been called to speak about certain proposed changes in the immigration policy of South Korea, whether it's at the country level or the city level, city of Seoul. And there is something that frustrates me a bit about these proposed changes, is that they're always framed as changes to immigration policy, when in fact the goal does seem to be, as you say, the attraction of foreign labor, and often on a temporary basis, to bring in foreign labor for a period, sort of with an eye of not having them around permanently. That's not immigration, I would say. It seems a little bit like a symptom of trying to solve a problem too late, when it's become too close to the crisis point. You know, if you want to grow an orchard, you can buy mature trees and try to plant them and hope for the best. They may not survive. You've got to plant the seeds and grow the trees. The analogy here is what I think would work a little better is bringing in genuine immigrants, people who want to have a life here permanently in Korea, and maybe their kids can become the professionals Korea is looking for, or not just professionals, but workers at any level. That's something that doesn't really get addressed clearly, I find, in these discussions of policy in Korea. But you know, there are many examples of other countries, which we'll talk about later, which show that if you're thinking you want to bring people temporarily to cover a temporary labor shortage, if the shortage goes away, even if it's due to an economic downturn, the people don't go away. So I think that's a scenario that's not being considered quite as realistically as it needs to be.
Right, and before we delve further into that, Chien-Hao, capital Seoul here last month, it shared plans to hire foreigners as bus drivers on neighborhood routes now. Do you see a gradual expansion of work opportunities for foreigners in diverse fields here in the country?
Yes, comparing to like 12 years ago when first came here, you can see that now the more and more companies here are willing to hire more foreigners working. But I am very critical. I have a very critical stance. Like if we talk about like the issues like the Seoul city government trying to hire foreigners to become like the green village bus drivers, the 마을 bus. We have a problem that because even now the domestic drivers themselves for the 마을 bus, the green bus, they are complaining that their working condition is too bad. If you look at the pay, their salary is only 70% of the drivers for the bus routes downtown, so-called the blue bus, right here in the downtown Seoul. That's why you can see that many green bus drivers, they are very old. They are almost over 60s. They are no young people, no younger generation bus drivers are willing to join, and it is always short-staffed. So that means that if the situation cannot be improved, you are just making foreigners doing the things that the domestic workers, the domestic people don't want, and paying them less in order to save money and make the staffs being fulfilled. I don't think it's a good phenomenon for public transportation, and it is not going to do any good things on maintaining the quality and safety.
Right. Chien-Hao, Seoul's welcoming, however, Filipino helpers this year made quite a bit of foreign headlines as well, because their pay, of course, was equal to the pay of workers here in the country as well as helpers. What are your thoughts regarding the Filipino helpers here in Seoul? I
was so busy because of this, because many Korean journalists contact with me, asking me what is this like in Taiwan. They're trying to comparing with the experience between Taiwan and Philippines, because we already imported like Filipino and Indonesian workers during the mid and late 90s. And anyway, back to Korea. The country and the Seoul metropolitan government, they say they decide to push this due to the problem of low birth rate and labor shortages. As many people complain that the burden of paying for the care sector is too heavy, which make them become unwilling to give birth. And in Korea, we have some debates that should those Filipino helpers at least being paid by the minimum wage here. And some who stand in the basis of the human rights claiming that they should be, they should instead of being exploited. But others are arguing that the price is still too high if being paid by the minimum wage, and making only rich people affordable. And indeed, if you look at the current situation, many of those hiring Filipino helpers are based in Gangnam, which is the rich area of Seoul. So while bringing the Filipino helpers to Seoul really improve the problem? I doubt it. But should the Filipino being paid at least by the minimum wage? Frankly speaking, it's always not easy to take care of babies and elders. They should be treated well too. But if the pay is too low, those people might just run away, or they're just going to hide themselves, and it's going to cause more problem inside the country. So it will indeed become a very dilemma, as the nation's social welfare system is not good enough, or is still not affordable to deal with this.
All right. Well, it is a trial phase right here in the capital city. Whether or not it will be expanded remains to be seen, of course. Moving forward, Colin, what do you suppose makes Korea an appealing destination for foreign workers?
Well, if you think about workers from, shall we say, less developed countries, I think the reasons are obvious. You know, they come here and say, oh, look at this transit system and look at how orderly the roads are, look at how clean everything is. Now, you say to a Korean how clean and orderly Seoul is, they'll ask you, what city are you talking about again? You know, but I think oftentimes the Korean perception of Korean society is negative enough that it makes it hard to see some of the qualities that attract foreigners, be they workers or not. And I'm not even just saying from the less developed side of the world. I mean, many of the articles that come out on this subject about workers who come to Korea or foreigners who want to live here also bring in, say, for example, Americans, such as myself, and they'll say, like, even compared to the United States, ostensibly a more developed country, you know, they'll say, well, Korea has a lack of violent crime that I enjoy. It has, as I say, the infrastructure is of a very high level, higher than anywhere in the United States. And so I think there are many reasons, but they're not clearly visible to Koreans who are a little too used to them. But of course, the wages are much lower than in the US, for example, but they're much higher than in, say, Vietnam or in the Philippines. So you have to take all of this into account at once. But clearly, people from all different kinds of countries have found Korea a good place to call home. Just many of them have struggled with the visa side, the employment side, the economic side occasionally.
Right, and staying with that, Chien-Hao, so amid plans to further expand the presence of foreign workers here, concerns still remain regarding their treatment. Could you tell us a bit more about this?
Indeed, I'm not trying to say it means all, but many foreign laborers, especially those coming from Southeastern Asian countries, working in the farms or factories in like Chuncheon or Chonglai areas, many of them, they are facing serious difficulties of being exploited. I just attended a press briefing 2 days ago, which the 3 laborers claiming that their payment were being delayed or being forced to work longer hours without any additional fee. Even one of them who worked in the factory was not being provided with proper masks and equipment. So later he found that he has health problems and he had 40% of his lung cut. They were unable to obtain any kind of assistance from the government, and they want to file lawsuit themselves, but their duration of stay is going to be expired. Many of them are like that, and if they leave Korea, then it will be impossible for them to fight for their justice. And the lawyer and the NGOs and the labor union staffs here in South Korea told me that they are receiving these kind of cases every year and every month. And currently we do have labor standards inspection here in South Korea, but seems that the system itself is unable to fully protect the foreign laborers from being cheated or exploited, especially for many of them who are unable to speak Korean. It is hard to deal with these kind of problems.
Right, and unfortunately, this plight faced by foreign workers in different countries, it's not just the case here in Korea. Such foreign workers are also facing such difficulties in countries like Japan, Singapore, and Germany, I believe. Could you tell us a bit more, Colin?
Those are often brought up as 3 examples in these policy proposals to which Korea can be compared, or to show the pitfalls, I suppose, Korea could fall into with these immigration policies or foreign labor policies. Germany has a long history of bringing in foreign labor, longer than most Asian countries. So one of the main groups that's been there a long time, Turks. There are many Turkish immigrants, and now there are sort of 3 generations of Turks who were initially there as foreign labor. They had children. Their children have had children, but there's still a feeling that they are apart from mainstream German society in many cases. Or more recently, Germany brought in many Syrian refugees, accepted many refugees, and you can find many cases of refugees who went to German schools, up through tertiary education, and still feel like they were never accepted there, and so have left for other parts of Europe, which you can do if you have an EU passport. At least that's relatively easy. Japan has made a lot of efforts recently, and I saw on social media the fruit of one of this was a sign posted on a convenience store that said, in Japanese, please give regard, or please treat well our foreign employees, because they're still learning how to integrate into Japanese society and to speak Japanese. I myself in Japan, when I've gone there, have seen foreign workers in stores, which is something you don't see in Korea. And they seem to be, they can speak Japanese. They seem to be sort of getting along. I think it remains to be seen how, say, other sectors like agriculture or sort of more labor-intensive, more industrial sectors of the economy can handle it, because you hear stories there of workers brought in explicitly, temporarily, come here for a few years, get skills, get sent back, and you have the ones who escape early because the conditions are too bad, and then the ones who don't want to leave at the end. So you have both of those dangers that are difficult to avoid on either side. And Singapore, with a very small population compared to South Korea, has the trouble of, well, I think it's something like a fifth of the population is foreign-born in Singapore, and the resentment that has arisen amid the native-born population about the foreigners taking their jobs has kind of sprung up again after the death of Lee Kuan Yew, who's considered to be the father of modern Singapore. His idea was, oh, good, let's have foreign workers here, and they can spur on the Singaporeans. They'll sit up and work even harder if they have foreign competition within the country. But now, his era is over, has been over for a while, and there's a sense that, look, we have to make policies so that foreigners can't take Singaporean jobs. You hear the same thing in the US, foreigners taking American jobs. So whether or not the perception is true to the reality, the perception itself, if people start thinking foreigners are taking our jobs, that will influence policy and maybe influence economic competitiveness, which in Singapore is a huge value, is a huge sort of selling point for that country.
Right then. Back here in Korea, Chien-Hao, what can the government do perhaps to better accommodate its foreign workers, do you think?
I think providing those those foreign laborers like legal protection and consulting is very important, because many of them, they can't speak Korean, and if they face any kind of situations, any difficulties, they need help. And many of them, they don't even know what's the law, what's the legal system going on. So they need some people to help them and to deal with these problems. And also trying to confirm, I think the government has the responsibility to trying to make sure the labor environment and condition is well. For example, is this working place really safe, and is the security equipments full being operated? Try not to make those the incidents of like people died of like accidents, this kind of things happen, because you can see not even for foreign workers, but the domestic worker, that happens to the domestic workers, you can see every week, right? So I think the government needs to pay more attention on these issues.
Right, for sure, workplace safety.
Yeah.
All right, I'm afraid that's all the time we have today. Chien-Hao, as always, thank you so much for your thoughts.
Thank you so much.
And Colin, thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you.
Right, well, that ends this week's editions of Press Perspective. Thank you for watching. Have a great weekend and see you same time on Monday.